So welcome to my first ever YouTube video. I can't believe I'm doing this. I am so nervous and sweating. I don't know why. It's not like anyone's gonna actually watch this. And if you do, thank you so much for being here. I'm very scared. I don't know why. But today I wanted to talk to you guys about my journey to becoming a biomedical scientist because I studied biomedical science at uni in the UK and I feel like I learned so many things after the degree or while I was on my placement year about being a biomedical scientist that I just wish someone would have told me when I was doing my degree or before, just to know what to expect or just to understand what it takes to be a biomedical scientist. Now, if you're new to my channel, this is not just going to be about biomedical science. I am going to make a lot of reading videos and science videos that are not related to biomedical science, but I want to also keep just a series of videos that are biomed related because this is how my journey on social media started. I started talking about becoming a biomedical scientist in 2020 on Instagram, and then it expanded to TikTok, and now here we are on YouTube. So I want to stay true to how my journey started and who I am, I guess, at my core, because regardless what I do in my career, I will always still be a biomedical scientist. That will never change. And yeah, I want to help educate people and bring awareness to this career path. So I'm starting with this because this is my most comfort topic ever. I have been talking about becoming a biomedical scientist for literally the past 6 years. So this is what I feel most comfortable with, and that's why I decided to pick this as my topic. So if you're thinking about studying biomedical science in uni, then you're gonna want to watch this video. But also if you're currently doing your degree in biomedical science and you're thinking maybe I don't want to do lab work, I don't want a lab career, then this video is also for you because I've been there and I know what it takes and how frustrating and how annoying that realization can be and how much it can change your life and the way you saw yourself and the way you saw your career. But also, if you just want to know what biomedical scientists are, then this video is also for you because I'm going to be talking to you about what biomedical scientists do. And I've got some notes here on my phone just to make sure I stay on track and I'm talking about the right things and I don't forget anything. So hopefully this is not going to be too long. I'm going to try and keep it really short and to the point. But if you have any questions, leave them in the comments and I'm happy to make a lot of other follow-up videos. But before, let's start with a drink because I do have a light here and I am slightly sweating. Today we're drinking kefir water. So I've had this before and I really liked it, and I'm having this in my books and coffee mug. If you want to subscribe to my channel, and you're going to see a lot more reading and books videos as well. So this is very on brand for me. I did find this on Amazon and I thought it was a great purchase. How beautiful is that? Beautiful. Perfect. This is what I love spending my adult money on, and I have no regrets. Okay, so point number one is, what is a biomedical scientist? Now, biomedical science is one of the most popular degrees in uni, and people usually can tell you that this is for people who don't get into medicine and don't want to become a doctor. And this is how I stumbled across this career path. So in school before uni, I was very much science focused. It was kind of my favorite subjects. I was relatively good at them and I knew I wanted to do something science related. But I couldn't do medicine because I didn't have an A-level equivalent in chemistry, which is required for a lot of the degrees. But also I wasn't 100% sure I wanted to become a doctor. So I didn't really mind not becoming a doctor. But when I learned about biomedical scientists, it sounded really good on paper. You get to do this amazing science degree, and then at the end, you do something that requires lab work. Now, something I wish people were told more of is what is the traditional career path as a biomedical scientist, and then what other career paths you can choose if you have a biomed degree but you don't want to do the traditional route. Because I feel that in certain unis, the traditional career path is pushed so heavily that it almost feels like there is no other option. There's nothing else for me to do unless I become a biomedical scientist, and that is not correct. In the traditional career path, biomedical scientists work within NHS labs in the UK. So every single city, I guess, has an NHS hospital, hopefully. Bigger ones have multiple and smaller ones have just one. But within the NHS hospital, there is a diagnostic lab, and that's where all the samples samples that get taken from patients. So blood samples, tissue samples, they all get collected. If you've ever had a blood sample, then you know. They get collected and they get sent to the lab, which is usually in a part of the hospital that is not open to the public. You don't really have patients going in and out. And that's where the biomedical scientists work. So if you are currently studying biomedical science, then you've probably done a lot of practicals and they are in an open uni lab. The hospital labs are very similar. So it's a very big open space lab that all the biomedical scientists work alongside medical lab assistant and assistant practitioners. So these are kind of the three professions that you find within a diagnostics lab in the NHS. And what you do day to day is basically help process the samples. So within a hospital, there's also different labs. So you have blood science labs, for example, which is where all the blood samples go, which is the easiest one to understand. You have biochemistry labs, you have immunology labs, you have histopathology labs. So I worked in histopathology, which is basically where if you take a piece of tissue from a patient, that will go to histopathology, and then the end result of a histopathology lab is the slides with the tissue on them that are stained. I'll attach a picture, but if you study biomedical science, you have probably seen these already. You know what they are. But that is the end product, and the role of the biomedical scientist is to work all the required stages to get to this end product. Okay, now there's also multiple ways to become a biomedical scientist. There's multiple routes, but this I'm basically going to explain just the way I did it, which I think is the quickest way and easiest way and also most efficient way. I studied at uni an IBMS accredited biomedical science degree. Now, why does your degree need to be IBMS accredited? Well, that's because if you're on an IBMS accredited biomedical science degree, then the IBMS basically makes sure that your degree has all the required modules for you to then end up being a biomedical scientist in the NHS. So hopefully I'm going to be throwing a lot of terms out there. And if you're confused, then that's okay. Watch this video again, because it took me a while to understand all of this. But once you get it, it's going to be really, really easy moving forward. So it's just one of those things that it takes a while to wrap your head around all of these terms. But once you do, it's going to make your life so much easier. And it's going to make sense, I guess, somewhat, because this career path is definitely very confusing. So if you're on an IBMS accredited biomedical science degree, then what you can do as part of your degree is go on an NHS placement. So a placement year is between the second year of your degree and the third year of your degree. And an NHS placement specifically is really important for your career as a biomedical scientist, because during that placement, you will be working in an NHS diagnostic lab and you'll be completing something called the IBMS registration portfolio. Now, this is called the registration portfolio because you need this portfolio to then become HCPC registered, which is the legal requirement for a biomedical scientist who wants to work as a biomedical scientist in the NHS. So if you don't have this registration, you can still get a job in the lab. It's most likely going to be either as a medical lab assistant or an assistant practitioner, which are both the positions underneath. But you can't progress beyond that unless you have this HCPC registration. So why I'm saying this is the quickest method is because a lot of people start on a biomedical science degree and they don't realize they need an HCPC registration. They don't realize they need to do an NHS placement year. And what happens is you graduate and then you're looking for jobs, which I'm saying this because when I was working in the lab, I got to speak to a lot of my coworkers who were in this situation. So I heard firsthand from them what it really takes to get this registration and do this portfolio after graduation. But basically, you'll be graduating with your biomedical science degree and then you'll be looking for jobs, and you can't apply to any biomedical scientist jobs in the NHS because you don't have the HCPC registration. So what you have to do is instead apply for medical lab assistant roles or AP roles, which tend to be, I would say, underqualified for someone with a biomedical science degree, but at the same time, there's no other option for you besides those roles in an NHS lab. And then once you're in the lab and you have a position there, it's always much easier to convince your managers to support you in doing the registration portfolio on your own alongside your job to then become registered. But what can happen in a lot of these situations is you work in a very busy lab, and most of the time your training is no one's priority. So once you work as an MLA, for example, your training and doing your portfolio is not something that anyone will prioritize. So it will end up being something that you have to do late after work, or you have to convince your manager to support you wherever they can. Whereas when you are on a placement year and you're sent by the uni, training is your priority. So anyone in the lab will be supporting you to get this registration done, because in 1 year, you'll be going back to uni and everyone's basically on board with that plan and has to meet that deadline. So hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, I really hope it makes sense, because I've never filmed a YouTube video before. I've had this conversation in person with people so many times. So hopefully this comes across like we're just sat having a chat, because if I'm editing this back, none of this makes sense. I will be crying. I will literally be crying. So I had no idea about any of this information until I went on my own placement and I started talking to people. And it started all making sense. And I started hearing people's personal stories. And I felt really bad, because I just can't believe it's so difficult to become a biomedical scientist when there are so many job shortages and there's so many people out there who want to do this and they want to help people and they want to be scientists. And I feel like sometimes the system makes it so difficult for people to do this, which is why hopefully this video is going to help someone out there if you're confused. Okay, so summary. So far, the 3 main players in becoming a biomedical scientist in the UK is your university, whether or not it's IBMS accredited, the NHS, which you need to do a placement in to then get your registration portfolio. So the 3rd player is the IBMS. Now, my degree, it was IBMS accredited because at the time I felt like I wanted to work in a lab in the NHS, and that's why I chose this degree. However, after the first year, I realized at the end that my current university that I was at did not provide NHS placements. So sometimes if you go to an IBMS accredited uni, they will either help you secure an NHS placement or they will not help you secure an NHS placement. And at the first uni I was at, because spoiler, I ended up transferring, but the first uni I chose did not help you get an NHS placement. So it was up to me to find a position and get accepted. So at the time, to me, this felt like it wasn't enough support. I felt like I had no idea about this career and I wanted as much support from the university if I was going to go there for the next 4 years. So what I decided to do is I ended up transferring, and I transferred to a different university in the UK, which was also IBMS accredited. But what they did is they offered basically 100% support to get an NHS placement. So they collaborated with different hospitals in the area and they would send their students to those hospitals on placements. I did my placement in 2021, straight after, I would say, or in the middle of the COVID pandemic, however you want to see it. But I know that at the time, everyone was quarantining and I was going to the hospital every single day, which is why I think my COVID experience is so unique, but this is for another story. And what my second uni did, which was really supportive, is they encouraged us to submit applications, and they helped us with our applications, which was just a CV and a cover letter. And then they negotiated, were the people discussing with the hospitals, helped put us in placements that we wanted. So I ended up moving away from the town where my uni was for this placement for a year. I did my placement in Manchester. So I worked in one of the Manchester hospitals for an entire year. And yeah, I can't emphasize how important your university supporting you is. I don't think I would have gone on an NHS placement if the uni I went to wasn't so supportive and provided so much clarity and explained why this is important, and also helped with the application, because when I was a student, my application was really not that great. My CV had literally nothing on it. Once I secured my NHS placement, I basically just started working in a lab with little to no prior experience. And I think if you're doing a biomed degree, it's so easy to look at all the practicals you do every week and be like, I don't understand why I'm doing this. Your experiments are not working out. I mean, none of my experiments were working out at the time. But then when you find yourself in a big lab, it starts to make so much more sense. But despite the fact that I was doing so many practicals at uni, when I got into this big lab, I felt so overwhelmed. I had no idea what was going on. I didn't want to touch anything. I was just so scared to touch or mess anything up. But hopefully when you join this lab, everyone kind of starts taking responsibility of you if you are the student, because you're also going to be kind of the youngest person there. So you're going to have the less experience and be the youngest person there. And my experience was really good in the sense that everyone kind of joined in helping to train me. So I would shadow people, I would look at what they're doing, and then slowly slowly built my confidence and then started helping them out myself as well. But I started working on my portfolio kind of like straight away. And basically, while you're working in this NHS lab, you are building skills every single day. And then those skills go towards evidences that form the registration portfolio. So this registration portfolio, to put it in simple terms, is basically just you saying, hey, I have the skills to be a biomedical scientist. The HCPC provides you with a list of standards that every single biomedical scientist should meet, and you can find these on their website. I can attach a picture here, but you can find these standards on their website. They're non-generic, so they don't necessarily relate to biomedical scientists. So there'll be things like teamwork, communication, things like that. And what you need to do is provide these like one-page evidences where you say, hey, I'm meeting these standards because I've done this work or built these skills. So for example, the most easy and simple one I think of my evidence I can still remember to this day is like I've sent this email communicating these lab matters, therefore I am good at communicating. It's literally as simple as that. So the portfolio itself is not difficult to complete. It's just you building those skills to then say, hey, I have the skills, I can be a biomedical scientist. So the portfolio overall, I would say takes about 6 months to put together, and you are given half a day by the lab to work on your portfolio every week. So I felt like that was plenty. I didn't feel overwhelmed. I didn't feel like I had to do a lot of overtime or work alongside the 9 to 5 I was already doing in the lab too much due to the portfolio. And once your portfolio is finished, which usually coincides with the end of your placement, which is 12 months, you do an assessment. And I know this can sound a bit scary for people, but it really was not scary at all. What happens is another biomedical scientist from another lab in another city will join a Zoom call with you, and they will have a look at your portfolio and they will ask you some questions about your lab. And then based on your answers, they will either decide if you pass or if you fail. But most of the time, if you've been training for 12 years, oh my God, not 12 years, 12 months. If you've been training for 12 months and you've been building your skills for 12 months and you've been working on your portfolio for 12 months, there's no reason for you to fail this assessment. I think I made it such a big deal in my head because I had been working towards it for such a long time. But now looking back, it was literally just an informal chat with someone, asking me questions about the lab, about the things I already knew so well because I've been working there for 12 months and not 12 years. That would be crazy. So yeah, once you pass your assessment, you go back to uni for final year. I went back to uni for final year. I can make a video about returning from a placement year because it was such an adjustment. I feel like I started back in first year of uni. All my friends had graduated. I was like, what am I even doing here? I felt so much older than everyone else, even though it was just 1 year. But that's a different topic for a different day. But what you need to do in final year is obviously pass your degree, which hopefully everyone watching this video will do or is doing if you're in uni right now. Because once you pass your degree and you have your degree certificate, then you use your portfolio that you've completed and your degree certificate and you submit these to the HCPC and they will say, hey, Alex, I'm adding you on the register. You're on the register. Actually, let me find if I can see the message they send you. Oh my God, I found it. Okay, so I looked up in my text messages HCPC to see if I still have the message that they sent you when to notify you that you're on the register. Basically, 12th of August, 2022, I got this message from the HCPC basically letting me know that now officially I am on the register. And how crazy is that? Because I've worked towards this for, at this point, 4 years. I've been working towards this registration for 4 years. And this is the text message they sent me and I still have it. Once you've registered with HCPC, basically you are done. And I wish I could say that this is where life gets really, really easy. But for me, life did not get easy at this point because of 2 things. First thing was I decided I don't want to be a biomedical scientist. So I have been working for this for 4 years. And then I decided it's not a career for me. And I did have a bit of a mental breakdown. And by a bit, I mean a massive mental breakdown. I think I had a bit of an existential crisis for about 6 months because I just couldn't accept the fact that I didn't want to be a biomedical scientist anymore after working towards this for so long. I felt like I was quitting and giving up everything I had been working towards. And it felt so heartbreaking at the time. But also because number two, just because you're HCPC registered does not mean that there are enough jobs available in your area for you to apply to. And two, it also doesn't mean that if you apply to these jobs, you will hear back. I think when you're in uni, when I was in uni, it felt like if I apply, if I have this HCPC registration, which everyone's working towards, I mean, everyone who went on an NHS placement, if I have this registration, then life will get easy and I can just apply for a job and I will get it because I have this registration. But that was not at all my experience. I had a very short phase where I was applying to biomedical scientist roles, I think because I was going through my midlife crisis, and I didn't really hear back from anyone. I don't know if I was putting a lot of effort into those applications, so maybe that's my fault as well. But just because you have this registration does not mean you are guaranteed a job or that it will be easy to get a job. You are still competing with everyone else who is on the register, including biomedical scientists who have tons and tons and years of experience. So what ended up being the case for me is I applied to a few biomedical scientist jobs, but I didn't hear back. And also at the time I was living in a smaller town in the UK. I now live in London. Let me know if you want to see some London content, but I've been living here for 3-4 years maybe. But at the time I was not living in London, and I looked for biomedical scientist jobs in my area and there were literally not that many, maybe 1 to 2 positions. And I just felt like it was a sign. It was a sign that I didn't want to be a biomedical scientist anymore. And also it was really hard for me to get a job. There was no openings in my area. So I ended up pivoting and now I do something completely different, which I can make other videos about. But hopefully I've been talking for 25 minutes. So hopefully this all makes sense. If you have any questions, please do let me know in the comments. And also, please subscribe if you want to see more of my face and more of my videos, because I do plan to make more content about biomedical science, but not just becoming a biomedical scientist, but also all the different careers you can do with a biomedical science degree. So yeah, I think that will be all for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.